Hi there, it's Jeff from Hot Tub Owner HQ, and if you've followed my channel for any length of time, you know I went a very long time of not doing videos at all, almost a year and a half. I'm back in action now, but one of the things that has happened in the interim when I wasn't doing videos on this channel is I've racked up an enormous amount of unanswered comments on my videos. And so I wanted to take this opportunity right here, right now, to address and answer those questions on a YouTube video rather than my going through the hundreds of comments one by one and answering them there on my channel. A lot of them, I'm assuming, are going to be repetitive questions, different people asking similar questions. It makes more sense, I think, for me to do it this way, just to kind of get caught up a little bit now that I'm back in action. Anyway, I'm glad you're here with me today. Let's dive right into the questions. Jose says, great videos. I have a question. I'm a first-time owner. I was given chlorine granules, spa, shocker / oxidizer, and pH and alkalinity up. I was told this was all I needed. Can I use bromine? The short answer is there are a couple of hot tub manufacturers that say they don't want you to use bromine. They do want you to use chlorine. If your hot tub is brand new and under warranty and your hot tub manual says you cannot use bromine, I would not recommend using it just because it would void the warranty and you might need to take advantage of that at some point. If that's not the situation, or if it's not under warranty, then absolutely, I do prefer bromine, and that's all I use in mine for my sanitizer. You can definitely use chlorine shock in conjunction with bromine sanitizer. You mentioned here that you were given pH and alkalinity up, but not down. And there are definitely times where you might need to bring one or both of those things down. So I would definitely recommend getting a pH down product or a spa down product to handle that in the event you ever need that. I tend to find that once I've balanced my alkalinity and my pH after filling up my hot tub, either the first time or after I've refilled it, I tend to find that I can kind of leave those things alone unless the hot tub goes through a period of really heavy use, in which case I might need to adjust the pH. But alkalinity, which is the ability of the water to kind of absorb and deal with acidity, tends to kind of, once you get it set, it doesn't really tend to change until the next time you do a water change, because chances are the water coming out of your garden hose isn't where you want it to be. Next question here. Your comment about turning on every water feature was a good one. Thank you. And what he's referring to there, that was from Bill. What he's referring to there is when I add chemicals to the water, I do turn on the jets and the waterfalls and everything else. That way it just kind of like circulates the chemicals throughout all of the water faster, kind of gets every little area of water, plumbing, pipes, equipment, all of that kind of stuff. So that's what he's referring to, and that's why I do that. Grace says, thanks for the tutorial. I also live in Central Texas. That's where I live, just outside of Austin. I've learned a lot about my hot tub and have subscribed to your channel for more tips. I am still new at hot tub ownership and I'm striving to get my money's worth by taking extra good care of my tub's chemicals and maintenance. Concerning your tub's acrylic shell exposed to the UV rays, my owner's manual states that prolonged exposure to UV rays will void the warranty, which is 5 years, I believe. I enjoy sitting under the stars, but I would also like to use it during the day. Do you have a cover that isn't shown in the video? Yes, I always keep my hot tub covered when I'm not using it. When I shoot my videos, I tend to have the cover all the way open, so it's not really on camera. But yes, I absolutely keep it covered when I'm not using it. Also helps to keep the leaves and debris and bugs and everything else out too. So I would definitely do that. Unless you're using the hot tub every day for hours on end though, I would not worry about UV rays and the acrylic shell. Crossroads says, we just moved to Texas and have a hot tub. I asked someone if we needed to winterize it. They said no. Also, we don't do winter here. And you know, depends on what part of Texas you're in. Texas is a very big state. I have relatives that live up in the Lubbock area and the Amarillo area, and they absolutely do get winter up there. So it depends on where you live. That being said though, and I do have other videos that cover this, I would not winterize my hot tub except for a couple of key things. If I was going to go away for a month or more, like maybe I have two homes, a summer home and a winter home, and I'm going to be gone for a month or more, I would probably winterize it under those circumstances. Or if where I lived was prone to frequent power outages, and those power outages tended to last for 24 hours or longer. I did a video once, I think probably, a year and a half ago, when it was cold outside, and I intentionally cut the power on my hot tub to see how much the temperature would drop overnight, and it only dropped, I want to say, about 7 or 8 degrees. Not a lot. So again, unless your power is going out frequently for 24 hours or longer, I wouldn't worry about winterizing it unless you're going away for a long period of time. Otherwise, just enjoy it. Keep the lid on there, keep the snow and the ice off of the lid if it does accumulate on there. Again, it depends on where you are in Texas, but even here outside of Austin, I have seen snow here, and I have had to clean snow off of my hot tub's lid. Snow and ice tend to be very heavy, so if you get a large accumulation of that on the cover, it can damage the cover. So do keep stuff off of the cover, but enjoy your hot tub in the wintertime. It's excellent when the weather's cold outside. It says, I can't take a grown man seriously when he dyes his hair bizarre colors. Well, that's from Billy. It says, Texas detective. And I don't know what to tell you, to each their own. I don't always dye my hair bizarre colors, and you can see that in some of my older videos, but if you don't want to do it, don't do it. That's the beauty of a free country. Joe says, thank God for your channel. I'm about to get my jacuzzi hot tub and found so much useful information on your channel. Thank you so much, Joe. JD says, must use antifreeze labeled safe for pool. I would drain vac lines and thoroughly pour in the antifreeze into filter compartment. I would not leave water ever when the tub is off. And he may have misunderstood me, but yes, I would not cut the power on a hot tub while it still had water in it. I would absolutely not do that. That's just asking for bacteria buildup and other kinds of nasty things. I've never added antifreeze to my hot tub. If I was going to do that, I would do that again, if I didn't want to drain it and fully winterize it, I wanted to keep the water in there, in which case I would keep the power on. I could add antifreeze to the water if I thought that there was a good danger of the water temperature going below freezing. Now, if the power is on, that's not going to happen. If you've got your hot tub set to like 98 or 100 or something like that, it's just not going to happen. So it's not really necessary. Again, like I mentioned a minute ago, if your area is prone to frequent power outages that last for 24 hours or more, when the weather is well below freezing, maybe you do want to consider doing that if you don't want to drain it and winterize it. But I personally have never found a need to add antifreeze to the water. Emmanuel says, you make a very detailed and great videos. Keep them coming. Thank you. Well, thank you for being here. Andrew's got a couple of questions here. It says, decibels are measured on a logarithmic scale, so even a relatively small change on the meter are on orders of magnitude quieter to the ear. Unfortunately, this also means the distance that you measure in comparing can really throw off the results, if not exactly the same. And what he's talking about is I have a video where I measured before and after adding insulation to see how much quieter it made it. And again, that video was quite a while ago, so I don't honestly remember if I got the distance perfectly correct. I feel like I probably, I'm a musician in a former life, so I feel like I would have done that. But honestly, I haven't rewatched that video in a long time. But he is correct there. So if I didn't do that, do take that into consideration. I can tell you, though, from having added that insulation to my hot tub, it is definitely quieter than it was before I added that. Same guy, Andrew, also says, spa stores use vague generic names like pH up or spa down in an attempt to conceal the fact that they are insanely overcharging for common household products and cheaper pool chemicals. It would be great if YouTubes used the proper chemical names and encouraged homeowners to source their chemicals more wisely. You can still support your local spa store without paying. He may have some points there. Sometimes those chemicals are just something like baking soda, for example. However, I also think that because almost any chemical you add to affect alkalinity or pH affects the other one too, it's almost impossible to add a chemical to make the pH go up that doesn't also raise the alkalinity, or the same is true if you're trying to get it down. So I also think that's probably why a lot of these companies label things like spa up or spa down instead of pH up or alkalinity up. You get what I'm saying here. I think they label it that way because it does tend to affect both. Sometimes, depending on the chemical, it can affect things more on the pH side or more on the alkalinity side than the other, but it's almost impossible to affect one without the other. And yes, there are some products out there, and I have addressed this in some of my videos, where it is just baking soda and you're better off buying the orange box that you can get at the grocery store. Billy Boy says, just ordered one. It will be the third hot tub I've had. I paid $4,000 for the regular tub in 1999 and used it for about 2 seasons. Then I picked up a soft spa, I assume he means an inflatable hot tub, for about the same price and maybe used it 10 times. Here we are finding ourselves wanting one again. So glad I have these inflatable ones now. I'll probably use it for a year or two, and this time won't feel bad about tossing it. I actually own an inflatable hot tub. I originally bought it thinking I would put it in my RV, and then when we would go to campsites for an extended period of time, I would set it up in my campsite. Haven't actually ever done that though. It's kind of just sitting around my house. But I do have an Intex inflatable hot tub, and I do think it's a good quality product, and it's incredibly inexpensive. So yes, I can definitely see the advantages of having one of those, especially if you think you might want to put it in different places from time to time. Steve McQueen, assuming no relation to the late actor, says, better put some type of padding on the end where it hits your cover top part. Can already see you're going to puncture your cover. He's referring to a video I have about a hot tub cover lifter, and I actually haven't really thought about that, so I'll actually have to take a look and see if there is excess wear and tear where my hot tub cover is hitting the cover lifter that I use, but the cover lifter is invaluable. Daniel says, I'm currently debating whether or not to get a Strong Spas hot tub because it's just what fits my budget right now. Are these hot tubs actually worth it? And I've never actually heard of Strong Spas before. What I've done though, when I get these kind of questions from time to time, the first thing I do is I go and find their website, if I can find the company's website itself. Then I go to the Better Business Bureau website, which is bbb.gov, and I search for that website name. I remove the location, and I look and see, you know, are they accredited? Now, the Better Business Bureau does take money from people to become accredited, so it's not entirely impartial, in my opinion, because of the fact that they're receiving money from some, but not all of the companies. It is worth seeing if they're accredited, and it's also worth seeing what their grade is, because the Better Business Bureau assigns a grade of basically A to F. Where I find the real value is in looking at the complaints, and especially any complaints that are unanswered, but I also look for common complaints. If the same kind of complaint is coming up over and over and over again. There are also product reviews of the company on the Better Business Bureau website as well, and I definitely look at those also. Then if I can figure out where the company is located, I would also see if they have a local Yelp page, and I would look at those reviews also, and just try and get a well-rounded picture of the company. I would also want to know how long they've been in business for. If they've been in business like a year or two, you know, that's kind of dicey in my mind. If it's a decade or 2 or 3, that's great, unless the reviews are uniformly terrible. But that's how I research a company like that, but I've never actually heard of that one before. Brian Butler says, Jeff, great video. I use the same product, and you won't believe the color of the water after you let the filters soak. I think it's important to let your filters completely dry out before placing them back in the hot tub. The power soak opens up the pores of the fiberglass to release the oils and debris from the filter that can't just be rinsed off. I always have an extra filter for that reason. So he's talking about one of my videos where I showed how to clean your hot tub's filters, a deep clean specifically, which I do about every 3 months or so. I use a product by Spa Depot called Power Soak, and I put my filters in a 5-gallon bucket. I fill it with hot water. It's a 1/4 cup of the Power Soak product, and I let it sit for an hour, and then I rinse them off thoroughly, and then I do typically just put mine right back in the hot tub once I've given them a thorough rinse. He's recommending letting them dry completely, and that could take it overnight or if not longer, so he has an extra set of filters for that reason. And if you want to go that route, I would definitely have an extra set of filters for that same reason also. I've never done that, and I've never found an issue with that. The short answer is I don't really know, but I haven't had an issue doing it the way I do it. But it is good advice, I think. Diana says, my hot tub is in a screened-in porch. I've never turned it off, especially in winter. That's the best time to use it. That's in response to a video I have called, Should You Shut Your Hot Tub Down in Winter? And yes, I don't ever shut my hot tub down, except when I drain the water, which is about every 3 months. But otherwise, I don't ever cut the power to my hot tub. And especially in a screened-in porch, you know, all year it's going to be excellent in there, unless it gets super hot in the summertime. Hockey Mickey says, I don't think you're winterizing properly. You should put hot tub antifreeze in there too. There will be areas that will not be drained in the pipes. They will expand and they will crack. Your heater will not be the low point, so it doesn't really matter unscrewing through the union fittings. I would take a turkey baster and squirt the antifreeze in all the jets and various drains after you drain all the water. Should get to all those low points if there is water remaining. Really look at the pipe if you are able to, through the paneling off, and see where the low points are and see if you can get antifreeze into them. And I think he makes some good points there. I've never done that. I've never winterized my hot tub either though, but he's right. There are potentially some areas where the water levels could get really low, but not low enough so that they would drain out from all the different places where I might have the openings in the hot tub plumbing lines to let the water drain out. But I don't think that's really necessary unless you live somewhere like Chicago and you are going to power down your hot tub for an extended period of time. But I've never had to do that, and I've never had a problem with that, but I do think he makes some good points. Rob says, I was going to say the main change over winter here in Canada is to wear a toque, a beanie. I think he's just referring to a hat. And yes, I have a couple hats, and I live in Texas, but if I lived in Canada, I would absolutely wear a hat in winter. Michael says, it's funny how you emerged from under the deck at the beginning of the video. Added a bit of humor that I appreciated. And he's referring to a video I did quite a while ago called, Will My Hot Tub Crush My Deck? And sometimes, but not always, but especially in the early days of my channel, I did often start my videos with something funny. I kind of moved away from that after a while. It sounds like from his comment here that he appreciates the humor. So let me know in a comment on this video if you'd like to see more of that at the start of my future videos. Spray Paint Dude says, help, I keep having problems with the pH being too high and the alkalinity too low. So I've used a whole bottle of pH minus to get from 8.5 to 7.7. Then I add baking soda to get the alkalinity almost high enough to the suggested levels. 2 days later, pH is 8.4 and alkalinity is like 30 parts per million, which is really low. I've been leaving the air off when the cover is on, only running jet. Helps a little bit, but I worry it puts too much stress on the plumbing to keep the air restricted. I only have one pump in my hot tub. This is a 2-month tub and I'm still on my first fill. Should I keep adding baking soda to get the alkalinity right, then muriatic acid to drop the pH? Seems like a constant battle. I bought a bottle of Spa Sentry for the next fill as that's recommended to battle pH bounce. I've never actually had that problem before. I will say that it's always a good idea to fix the alkalinity before you worry about adjusting anything else. So I would definitely get the alkalinity correct and then worry about the pH as opposed to doing it the other way around. Alkalinity is basically a measure of how well your water handles the acidity. And then of course the pH is whether or not your water is alkaline or acidic. But you'll never really get the pH right if you don't first get the alkalinity right. So I think his suggestion here, adding baking soda to get the alkalinity right and then using muriatic acid to drop the pH, I do think that's probably a good strategy. I just personally haven't ever had that problem. It may be that the water coming out of your garden hose, assuming that's how you're filling it, is just really super low alkalinity. Garden hose water is typically never perfect for a hot tub, but I've never had it to be that off before. But I do think your suggestion there is a good one. What I'd love for you to do is to try that and then to comment back on this video and let me know if it worked for you. Mary Louise says, gets pretty cold here in the mountains, so we got a UMax portable, I'm assuming that's an inflatable hot tub, for $297, specifically because it has an internal motor and heater which produces warmer bubbles, an issue for most brands. We've had ours about 2 years. We never had to repair it. I clean the filters with a water hose and check chemicals every day. A little annoying to have to do that part, but well worth it. We put ours on a covered deck, helps with debris and preserves the plastic. Wish we could afford a big, nice one like yours. It's so beautiful. So glad you took the time to show a portable. An inflatable hot tub is absolutely a good way to go. It's a great way to get into the love of hot tubbing without a big expense, and then maybe, you know, someday down the road you move up to a nicer one. But there's nothing wrong with an inflatable one. Like I said, I bought an Intex inflatable one probably 2 years ago at this point. Very rarely used it. It's still sitting fully inflated in my backyard and it's never had an issue. No puncture damage, nothing like that. It's just kind of sitting there, sadly. I bought it originally intending to carry it in my RV and then set it up in campsites like I mentioned earlier. Then, you know, life got a little crazy. My wife left and I got divorced and, you know, I don't use my RV very often anymore. But an inflatable hot tub is definitely a great way to get into hot tubbing, and then you can always move up later. Andrew, who commented earlier, says total dissolved solids and visible debris are two different things. Total dissolved solids are not visible because they are dissolved chemicals within the water. The visible debris is always excluded from the water sample, so they are measured as total dissolved solids. TDS is not an issue with hot tubs because the water is changed every 3 or 4 months. And he may be right there. Sounds like he's more of an expert in some of those areas than I am. I'm just a guy who likes hot tubs and has owned 4 of them and has learned a lot along the way in managing and balancing and fixing my hot tubs. But it does sound like he makes some good points there. Conquering Lion says, thanks, Purple Elephant. I assume that's in response to my hair. VK says, thank you very much. Deb says, good info for a beginner hot tub user like myself. One minor thing, man, do you use your hands too much when talking? It was a little distracting for me, sorry. And it's entirely possible, I don't know. I haven't used them much in this video, but you know, I guess the video's young. But the video that Deb was referring to is one of my older ones, so maybe I was a little more animated back in the day. Gary H says, this review was so lame, you never actually even tried it out. Talking about a video about Intex inflatable hot tubs, and I'm sorry, Gary, you're totally wrong. I own an inflatable hot tub from Intex. It's sitting in my yard right now. See, that one was called Intex Inflatable Hot Tub Setup, Installation, and Review. So yes, that absolutely is the video of me setting up the Intex Inflatable Hot Tub that I bought on Amazon, and it's still sitting in my yard right now. It's okay to not like my video. Maybe he's saying when you never actually even tried it out. Maybe he's mad that I didn't get into the water. I have gotten into the water in my hot tub, but I don't think I did that on camera. No one really needs to see that. But I did thoroughly check out the hot tub, and I've owned it, and it's still sitting in my yard right now. But I'm sorry you didn't like my video. Gary H., same guy, says, all of the spas made by Bestway Corporation and rebranded. I think maybe he means are rebranded. They have just manufacturing variations to set them apart. That may or may not be true. I've never really looked into it. Intex generally has the best reviews out of Bestway or Coleman, or the other two big brands of inflatable hot tubs. I've always found Intex to have the better reviews. Could be just dumb luck. I don't know. Intex is the one I bought. I've never owned any of the other ones, so I can't really speak to that very effectively. Violetta Gran Canaria says, I wish I had seen this video a year ago when I got the hot tub for my Airbnb villa. I have come up with this exact setup on my own, but it took months of fiddling it first. This person's referring to one of my videos about water chemistry and how to get your water going quickly. So many people say you cannot combine chlorine and bromine, which made me avoid chlorine shock, but it is precisely the combination where my guests pour in a tablespoon of chlorine shock every night that keeps the water clean. And that's absolutely true. It is true that you don't want to combine chlorine sanitizer and bromine sanitizer. Those two things don't work well together, and there can be a chemical reaction. But chlorine sanitizer is formulated differently than chlorine shock. And so chlorine shock and bromine sanitizer are fine to use together. I know that's confusing. Game Time says, bromine is very dangerous. It takes a few hours for the human body to get rid of chlorine from the body. It takes months to get rid of bromine. Bromine is highly cancerous. And I don't know what to tell you. I have researched that before because I have seen similar comments. I've never found any credible evidence to that. I'm not saying this guy's inaccurate. I'm not saying he's lying. He may know something that I don't, but he didn't provide that information in his comment here. I use bromine, have in all of my hot tubs pretty much for years without issue. And I would think that if bromine is quote unquote highly cancerous, it wouldn't be on the market, or at least would come with a severe warning label, which mine does not. Dan says, anxiously awaiting delivery of my 110 volt hot tub, a Viking Royale P+. Will post my thoughts and maybe a video. Wish me luck. Well, good luck on that. What he's referring to is a 110 volt hot tub is one that has a normal plug that you can plug into a normal wall outlet, as opposed to mine, which is called a 220 volt or sometimes a 240 volt hot tub, which requires an electrician to wire it to a disconnect box, which then gets wired to your main breaker panel. So the 110, obviously, the benefits of that is you can put it anywhere you want as long as there's a nearby plug. You don't want to use extension cords with plug and play hot tubs, so you do want a nearby outlet. Typically those come with a 15-foot cord. So the beauty of that is you can just plug it in. You don't have to hire an electrician, which can be hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars depending on the layout of your breaker panel. But that's the beauty of that. The only downside is that you cannot typically use the heater and the jets at the same time. So if you're in the hot tub for a long period of time using the jets, you might notice the temperature drop a little bit because the heater's not able to kick in. But otherwise, it's a great way to go, and they often are far less expensive. So it's a great way to get into hot tubbing that's a little nicer than the inflatable, but not as nice as a, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, at least not as nice on your pocketbook. Jay says, I'm getting ready to get a hot tub, and people tell me I will need to plan on changing the water about 4 times a year. Why do I have to change the water that often? Well, that is about what I do. I change mine about every 3 months or so. It does depend upon how often you use it and how good a job you do of keeping your water sanitized. In other words, keeping up with the chemical maintenance and the filter maintenance. If you do a really good job, everything is by the book. You're checking your sanitizer levels a few times throughout the week. You're shocking it once a week. You're rinsing your filters every 3 weeks. You're doing a deep chemical soak of your filters every 3 months. You're replacing your filters about every 1 to 2 years, depending upon the shape that they're in and how good a job you're doing on that filter maintenance. If you're doing all of that and you're not using your hot tub very often, and when you do use it, it's not like, 4 or 5 people, it's just you or maybe one other person, maybe a couple times a week, maybe you can get away with every 6 months. I personally wouldn't do that. I can drain my hot tub in 15 minutes with the submersible pump that I use, and I do have other videos that show how to do that. And then I can fill it back up in maybe an hour and a half or so. The biggest process is the reheating of the water, which can take maybe 6 or 8 hours, depending upon what you have the temperature set to. And obviously you've got some water expense there as well. For the safety and the peace of mind of making sure there's no hidden bacteria in the water. I do like to change mine every 3 or 4 months. But if you're pristine about your chemical maintenance and you don't use it very often, you probably can get away with going up to 6 months. We're almost at the 30-minute mark here, so I'm just going to take maybe 5 more questions. I probably need to do a part 2 of this video. So Jeff here says, I took an 8-foot piece of vinyl tubing, about 2 feet of scrap PVC, I think 3/4 and 1/2 inch, slip them together, PVC end in the spa, hose out, start a siphon, then you have a water vacuum, boom, works like a champ. He's referring to cleaning debris off the bottom floor of the hot tub, which I have a recent video where I showed how to do that with a wet dry vac. I think what he's talking about would definitely work. For me, the wet dry vac's pretty easy though. Andrew, who's commented previously a few times, says, did he really say it never occurred to me to remove the floater when I was in the hot tub and it was banging into me? You can't make this stuff up. Well, I'm glad I'm here to amuse you, Andrew. He's referring to a video I made quite some time ago. I didn't used to like hot tub floaters, and I do now, and I do use my hot tub floater. And one of the reasons that I gave for originally not liking them was that, you know, if you're in the hot tub, the floater would sometimes bop into you. And that's what he's referring to. So I'm glad I can amuse you, Andrew. But I appreciate you being here, even if you don't always agree with me. Rona says, you can use a pool vacuum. We have a swim spa that I like to use when the filters don't catch all the debris and it doesn't suck up your water. So she's referring to that same video where I talk about using a wet dry vac to suck up debris. I didn't find it sucked up that much water, you know, maybe a gallon when I did that in the video that I was shooting the other day. But yeah, I do think if you want to buy something extra like a pool vacuum that doesn't actually suck up the water, I've never owned one of those, so I don't know exactly how that works. Jesse says, I thought my filter system was bad because it wasn't collecting the sand, and then your video came on. Glad I'm not alone. Thank you. I bought the $65 spa vacuum off of Amazon, uses suction and lets the water back out. So he's referring to the same thing that she was referring to, and he's referring to that same video. Sharp Life says, if only one person uses the hot tub and the water is balanced, why would I have to change the water? And that's similar to the question we had just a second ago. And essentially, when you get in the hot tub, even if it's just you, and even if you don't use it very often, dead skin cells are going to flake off into that water. There may be debris on the bottom of your feet. There may be laundry chemicals on your bathing suit. There may be lotions, body oils, things like that from your skin. That all of that's going to get in the water. And eventually, that's going to create biofilm, which is basically a bacteria buildup. And biofilm typically lives in the plumbing of your hot tub. It doesn't float on the surface of the water, so you don't always know it's there. And I use a product called Oh Yuck, basically a biofilm remover. I use that every time I change my water, and I do change mine about every 3 months or so. Again, like I said to the other comment person, if you're not using your hot tub very often and it's just you and you're on top of your chemical maintenance, you could probably get away with doing it every 6 months. I would not personally ever use a hot tub where I never change the water, though. I think that's asking for trouble. Let's do one more question here. Darren says, will this descale my spa filter? I've been told I likely have calcium deposits making the filter not work properly. And he's referring to the Spa Depot Power Soak product I was talking about earlier to deep clean my filters. And he's asking whether that's going to remove calcium buildup from the filter. And the short answer is I don't think so. I think you would probably need to add a descaler product to the water of your hot tub to get rid of scale buildup on the filters. If the filters have a lot of scale buildup, I would probably start with new filters and then just add that descaling product to your hot tub every time you change the water, because chances are your water has high levels of calcium in it, and you probably either don't have a water softener system, or if you do, the garden hose is not being routed through that, in which case the water coming into your hot tub every time you fill it has high levels of calcium. But once you've adjusted that, you don't need to keep adding that to it. But again, if your hot tub filters are really super clogged, and you'll be able to tell, you can take the filters out and you can see that hard, flaky scale buildup on there. And if you can't get that off gently, then I would probably just get new filters and then start fresh using a descale product in the water to make sure your calcium buildup doesn't come back on those new filters. Anyway, I hope this video helps you. I don't want it to be hours long, even though it could be, and I've only just scratched the surface of the comments I've got going on here. But I'll do another one very soon where I answer even more questions for you. But for now, I'll see you in the next video.